But I have often said I would rather die than I would betray a German. I don't want to betray any German or any German family. So that's why I spend so much of my life in prayer and contemplation.
William, nice to meet you again. We
Yes, sir.
saw each other for several days. Yeah?
Mm-hmm.
And today I have some question for you, a little more personal, not about the future to Germany, a little more about your feelings in this case.
Okay.
Yes. And many Germans were not aware of the consequences of the Bletchley Park, as you know. Especially the post-war generations have little to do with it, although today they live in a distorted information bubble in which the German permanent guilt and war misery, as you always talked about. You are doing a lot to make this pursued guilt complex transparent to Germans, so that they can at least become free again in their thinking. You are not surely not making friends with this behavior, yes? And what are the consequences for you personally if you turn against this supposed established historiography?
Well,
we have a nice fly here.
yes, that's
join our
yes.
interview.
Okay. Well, it's, yeah. I don't think much about what the consequences are. You have, throughout history, when you have a controlling agency, whether it comes out of war or whether it comes out of economic collapse, that controlling agency will do everything possible to make sure that truth doesn't come through. And their enemy is truth. I had a man say to me the other day that said, "William, what you're saying is extremely dangerous, and no one else in Germany is saying it. But," he said, "it's absolute truth. What you're saying is the absolute truth." So it would seem to me that those who are opponents of truth, they have to try to silence me in some way. So far we've had meetings that were canceled because the BND and the Crimea police, and we've had the Antifa and train loads trying to find me, but the question is, what is my crime? What crime am I actually committing? My major crime is to love Germans. That's my major crime.
And the truth.
Yes, but I can't separate the two, the Germans from the truth, because Germans do have wonderful minds. Their minds are wired in a way in which they seek clarity, and they're comfortable in truth and in clarity, but not being able to ask questions and not being able to find the raw material for their minds has been a major problem for Germans.
Yes.
Because it leaves them lesser than what they are and what they're meant to be. So, I'm not asking for revolution. You've never heard me ask for revolution. I have absolutely indicated that anyone who listens to me has to give up the idea of violence or Gewalt. love is the only answer for Germans. And even if Herr Scholz spends 100 billion or more for new weapons and for New Deal, the answer is still going to be love for Germans. So,
William, to close this question, have you already experienced openly attacks or heavy, you would say, headwind?
Yeah. Oh, yes. We've had. I think we've had 5 legitimate death threats. That's headwind.
Okay.
And I think we've had, a lot of warnings, subtle and otherwise. But I don't do this because I have an option. It's not like gee, why don't you do something safer, or why don't you talk as an academic? And plenty of people would want to listen to you as an economics professor or someone who has had a lot of experience in international economics. That would be interesting, but that's not what Germans need to hear.
Okay.
and the Germans I'm talking to, by the way, are ones that are not being listened to.
But your personal feeling, if there are threats to your person, how do you handle that?
I can't do anything about it. Either I'm protected
or not.
Or not. And if I'm not protected, then it will only take one person, one moment, one day. So we can only, Lisa and I can only, we try to laugh, and we try to say,
that's a good idea.
Yeah, we try.
Okay, William, you know the saying in Germany would say, Gott lässt sich nicht in die Karten sehen. Or in English translated, it would mean like something like this: God does not show his cards. Yes, you know that saying. Yes. In your lectures, you often make precise temporal predictions about certain events and turning points that you foresee for Germany. This is hardly possible by human standards. Yes, and isn't that also dangerous to you? And how feel you in this case when you point out those, I say, prophecies?
Yes, well, I don't know that they're prophecies necessarily. I do know that as long as my love for Germans is pure, it's pure good, that I have no ulterior motives, and I have no desire to gain from it, that I will have insight, let's call it insight, into events, especially events that are dramatic, or events where there's a great change coming, or whether there's a danger. If those things take place, then I will be given dates and times. That goes all the way back to the fall of the wall. I mean, I don't, of course, after an event happens, everyone says, oh yes, I knew that was going to happen. But of course they didn't know it was going to happen at all. So, because they didn't take a risk, they didn't go public, and they didn't, from the fall of the wall all the way through the economic crisis, what did I say in November? I said the perfect storm would be here in late January or February, and it would have a dramatic event that would change everybody's thinking. Well, of course, in February, and we did know, Lisa and I shared with Lisa that February 24th was the date that Russia would invade. And of course, everybody in Germany, even though they knew the Russian troops were on the border, it was like the vast majority of people did not believe that actual bullets would fly. They didn't believe it. And so we knew the date that it would start, and we knew pretty much where it was going. And now we have a good sense of where, not what is the perfect storm going to do, but when is it going to, we always knew there would be a second event. And so it seems very strongly to me that would be about 9 months from now.
Okay.
And that's what I'm saying. I try not to say anything that I don't know for certain, and so that's what I do. So far, I've been right. What was inflation today in Germany? 7.9%. Yeah.
Likely a little higher.
Yeah. Well, it is a little higher, but when I said it would go to 8% and above, that was on my birthday of 2020, and the inflation rate in Germany was 1.8%. Yes. And when Angela Merkel was faced with the word inflation, which during the entire Steuer section of the Bundestag discussions, she never mentioned the word inflation, not once. Yes. But when it was brought to her about inflation, she said, that's not possible. That's not possible. Virtually on the same week that I was saying, the 1.8 would go to 8% and above. So, so far, Lisa reminds me often, he said, you need to claim these things more frequently. Because nobody, you need to say, this is what I said here, this is what I said about immigration, this is what I said about the control on Germans over the summer. The COVID controls were way too tight for Germany.
The people tend to forget very easily.
Yeah, I know, I know. But I don't like to talk about myself. People heard it. There's plenty of videos. If they want to hear it again, they can. For me to say, oh, look what I did, that's not natural to me. I don't feel good about that at all.
That's the reason why I want to hear from you how you handle this. And to close this question, let me give the other thing. Does it perhaps lead people into a failed sense security, which then achieves exactly the opposite what you actually want to achieve for them? May that be?
You mean they have a sense of security?
You say this and that will happen,
yes.
But there will be another question to point this a little out. But if some things will not happen the way you say, that this can mislead the people a little and frustrate afterwards.
Yes, that would be devastating to me. Not because that they would be disappointed in me, but I have often said I would rather die than I would betray a German. I don't want to betray any German or any German family. So that's why I spend so much of my life in prayer and contemplation, is to make sure that I'm not saying something that is, self-deception is a terrible thing for us human beings.
Yes.
Because we get an idea in our mind, and then it becomes like a fixation in our mind, and then it becomes a self-deception. So, and then we start repeating it, and that's a danger. So I do everything humanly possible to make sure that that does not happen. So far, I've been right on things. And if I start being wrong, then obviously I won't have people listening anymore. So.
Okay, William, let's get a little tricky with the next question, yes? With your optimistic and encouraging messages for Germans, you mainly reach people who have a religious or spiritual background. You know that, yes?
Yes.
And that there are very many people in Germany without those background. Yeah? And how do you and yourself deal with this split feeling, I would say? Yeah? You should be aware of that. Is there, yes? That there are this religious and spiritual people and the people who argue a little to your sayings.
Yes.
Yes?
Well, for good reason, most Germans do not have a mature spiritual side to them. And many Germans have spiritual side that is dichotomous. It's not cogent, and it doesn't help with unity in German. It doesn't help. So I'm very realistic as to who is listening to me. You know, we've got 83 million people here.
Yes.
And when I do something really well, I have maybe 500,000 who are listening to me.
Yes.
When I do something fairly normal, then I have about 105,000 people listening. Okay, that's about the extent of it. So I only have a very tiny audience, and most of them do have a spiritual leaning to them in one thing, in one way or the other. So, would I love to break through to the 95 or 96 or 98%?
Yeah.
But the things I say either frighten them or they're puzzled by it. And no one in the... We were supposed to have an interview the other day. I think it was a week ago. A man had written to us from the very normal press, and I thought, whoa, that's nice. And so Lisa set up an interview, and as we went there, we said, well, that's nice, because I welcome anyone to question me. I mean, they can. I'm not hiding from anyone. You know, if Marcus Lantz or Han Villa said we are going to tear into you. But when we arrived for the interview, the man had left for South America on an assignment. So, so at this time, we do not have an audience.
Okay, so if you got the possibility to speak to this 95% about religious and spiritual, what would you say to them? What will you give?
I would tell them you have no reason to be afraid of anything. I'm not coming with a revolution. We're not coming to. I have seen the future. There's no fire in the streets. There's no revolutionary movement. This isn't the French Revolution, that I'm talking about. It is a natural and slightly overdue reversion to the norm. Okay, do you understand? Yes. Reversion to the norm. Yeah. And it is amazing how quickly the definition of normal can change. The 95% says we have a stable life. Maybe it's not the best in the world, but it's stable, our needs are met, we're okay. You know, all the way through our lives, most things are covered pretty good. So we don't really want any change. But in reality, they do want to change. But they're afraid of the change.
Right.
They're afraid of any change. And they are risk averse in the extreme. So change means risk to the 95%. And they don't have it bad today, okay? But my goodness, they're so far below their potential. Yes. That is not even funny, and that is a purposeful thing. So, you know, I believe that Germany can be both great and good.
Yes.
Okay. Merkel says Germany has to be good, but it shouldn't be great. Yes. I say, you know, and I'm only speaking of Merkel because Scholz hasn't really given. We don't really know where he stands on a lot of things. We don't. Yes. He hasn't revealed himself, but I believe Germany can be great and it can be good.
Okay, another question. You know the German saying, if you want change, you have to be the change. Yes. In your lectures, you repeatedly tell the people that they have to do anything. I would interpret it in this way. Yes. And so, what do you think people can do or should do to promote change? Yeah? But to do nothing can't be the way.
Well, when it comes to, I have had many people come to me and Lisa has been with me in nearly all of them, who want change and they want it right now. And they say, we're going to go to Berlin, we're going to do this, we're going to do this, and they all have some kind of radical idea, and they're impatient. That's their problem. And in every case, I have said, no, don't do this, because I will oppose you, and if I oppose you, you will lose. So why would you want to lose? You must be patient, okay? Because the perfect storm is not William. The perfect storm is the arm of God, and which means what is going to happen is going to happen. There are times when you can't stop something. You know, you can't just simply say, oh, well, we will put a barrier up, and then history will not happen.
Yes.
History will happen. Yes, I tell people over and over, it's your impatience that will get you hurt. Verletzt. Yes. So don't go that way. You have families, you have people who follow you. You must be patient. You've waited all these years. Can you wait 9 more months? You know, so
okay,
that's my attitude.
But sitting back and waiting. What's the change? What's the change for the people, or the change you have inside?
All I can do is to show them what is coming to them, and tell them that it is not only safe, but it's beautiful. It is a future that has everything that they don't like about this society today is going to change for the better, not for the worse. But to try to convince a modern-day German that change is good is not easy. As a matter of fact, it's almost impossible.
Okay, on the other hand, it means hope.
Hope is what I want to bring.
Okay,
yes.
Because the reality doesn't show that at the moment.
No, no.
Okay.
It doesn't appear that anything has changed.
Yes.
Okay. And the Ukraine thing is more confusion. Yes. You know, the Deutsche Welle asked this morning, what is Germany's policy towards the Ukraine?
Yes.
Why is Scholz not as aggressive as Johnson and Biden and others? Why isn't he out there pounding home and being more and more aggressive? And you know, I think there's a good reason for it. I don't think there's any enmity between Germans and Russians. I don't sense any. I don't run into any. I don't think there's a German who will be here tonight who wants to harm Russians in any way. Right. And so I think Scholz is a little bit confused.
Yes.
You know, Merkel spent 16 years making friends with Russia and making business connections with Russians. 4 million Russians living here in peace in Germany, and now all of a sudden we're supposed to be an enemy, but there's no explanation. Scholz has not went public and said, this is why Russia is now our enemy, and we must try to destroy them with our weapons we've paid for.
Yes.
You know, and by the way, we're going to build up the German military, and we're going to spend all this money, but if we keep giving the equipment to someone else, then we've left Germany in a vacuum, and now we've got someone else. So right now we're in a quandary. We're in a quandary.
Okay, a last question.
Okay.
William, if you had a wish free for the Germans, in this direction, in your direction, what would you wish for Germany and the Germans?
Oh, I would give anything if the Germans could, one, be comfortable with themselves.
Okay.
Because they're wonderful people, but they don't know that, and no one's ever bothered to tell them. And number two, that they would find leaders who love them, as versus control them. I mean, I'm 77, or I'm in my 77th year, and we haven't had a leader who really shows a deep love and concern for German families all over this country. They're so concerned with pleasing America, so concerned with pleasing Great Britain, so concerned with pleasing Brussels, that I don't think that German families are in the top 7 or 8 priorities. That's what I want. I want German leaders who come from the people and who love German families and know what needs to be done. Germany's a wealthy country.
Yes.
But the German families don't live as if they're in a wealthy country. They don't. Right. They're uncertain. They don't have their feet solidly on the ground. And that is what I would want more than anything, is that.
I think that was a very nice final word. So thank you.
Thank you.
William.
Yeah.
Yeah,
thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay.